Hello everybody and welcome to the Sovereign Village Project. I wanted to talk about food production in a small space because this property is a really good example of it. This is our temporary property here. It's a small cabin. It's basically a permaculture fix and flip that I'm doing. It's a small one-bedroom cabin on 3/4 of an acre, but most of that acreage is not really usable for much standard planting. It's a really steep holler with forest that casts a lot of shade. So we really only have a couple hundred square feet of planting space, but despite this small space, in transition, we've managed to really get a lot of food production going here. It's very crucial no matter where you're at, whether you're on a homestead or in an apartment, anywhere you are, you need to be planting out every square inch with food. Not only are we facing so many critical threats to our food supply, such as the new development in the last couple of days in the Suez Canal, and the imploding soybean supply, and the Grand Solar Minimum, and the intentional attacks on our food supply, and just the list goes on and on. But even without that, we've really been in SHTF in terms of food for a long time because our food supply is compromised. It's not healthy. What you get in the supermarket is from step one to delivery, it's just covered in pesticides and chemicals, and it's done unsustainably in a way that's destroying our waterways and our environment and killing our small farmers off. Nothing about it is good. It's not good for your body. It's killing you. It's giving you sicknesses and cancers and things. That's all rooted in fact. You can go find that on mainstream sources. Our processed food is killing us. So you got to stop putting poison in your body, even if the food supply is not collapsing, which it is. And so I wanted to show you what you can do in a small space because this is about as small as they come. In fact, we're raising all of our animals right now in what is essentially a closet. It's a laundry room. And it's more confined than I would like. I don't like these guys to be in cages, but we're all kind of in a small space right now. The house behind us is also very small. So the humans and the animals are all kind of having to just make do with what we've got for now. But the intention, of course, is to give them much more room in a much more natural environment than this. So just so you know, this is not normally how we would raise them. But within this small space, which is probably about 25 square feet, we have all of our rabbit production. These guys are ready to sell here. Actually, these are a cash crop. I timed the raising of them to generate a lot of manure. Say hi. Because their manure is immediately usable in the garden. Unlike other animal manures, it does not need to age. So rabbits are a perfect addition wherever you're at in the city or the country. If you're just trying to jumpstart production and you're in year one, you haven't really had time to start compost and to age manures, these guys are your best bet. Their manure is phenomenal. It does amazing things to your garden, and it does not need any processing. I just apply it directly. So rabbits are great, and like I said, I've timed these guys out to where now that I'm doing all my planting, I'm about to sell them right around the Easter season when rabbits sell really well. And I'll get all of the manure right when I need it, and then I'll get cash from them as well. So they're a good fiat currency generator. Rabbits are in really high demand right now, as a lot of people are buying them for homesteading. And of course, they're a backup plan for our meat as well, so they provide us a lot of protein. A breeding pair of rabbits can give you 180 pounds of meat every year. So that's astounding for what could be done in a couple of cages in a garage or a really tiny space. But they're also critical for the rest of what I'm going to show you, which is the garden, because without these inputs, I can't garden. Very few people are going to be so blessed to have amazing soil that's naturally going to grow everything they want. So we have to mend it, and I don't use chemical fertilizers or anything like that, so I have to use whatever I can generate. And I also don't trust manures because it's so hard to source good manure or compost right now because of the problem of persistent herbicides, which will destroy your garden. You can't do anything about it. It'll destroy it for decades. And so avoiding that is crucial. So unless you have a really trusted source of compost and manure, you've got to be producing your own. And rabbits are really the way to go if you're looking to get things done in a hurry. So rabbits are a great small farm, small homestead, even an apartment option. One that I don't have, which is good for very small spaces like apartments, and good for kind of more incognito operations, is quail. Produce you little eggs, good little protein source, very efficient animals in terms of feed to meat conversion, and they'll provide you with a lot of manure as well. As will these guys. Now their manure is going to need aged a little more. But we're going to be doing a tractoring system with them, and we'll be running them over our next beds, and they will not only fertilize it, but they will also weed it for us. They'll do pest management, and they'll till up the ground for us. And you can do chickens in a really small space with a good tractoring system as well. So that's another great small space option, and right now we've got 24 of these guys in just that little bin. Of course, they're about to outgrow it. They grow at an incredible rate, but that's the protein and the manure end of our production here in 25 to 30 square feet of space. inside of the house, I won't take you in there, but inside and out we have our nursery. This is more of our perennials, where we're getting all of our fruit trees and shrubs going. I started them I have a single south-facing window, a small south-facing window, and between that and a couple of grow lights, that's been where I've started everything, including the perennials here, but also annual seedlings such as peppers and tomatoes. So there's a lot you can do. Because I have such limited space and I don't want to spend a lot of money on grow lights, I start what I need to under the grow lights or in the south-facing window, and the second things are healthy, I move them to another window that doesn't get as much light, and they'll be fine there for a short amount of time, and I'll start moving them outside as weather changes. So I've just been eking out every bit of space that I can possibly use and getting really good results. So this is about the size of an apartment balcony, and it's not even full up yet with perennials. It will be, but all of this is going to be planted out on a 5-acre site. So I'm starting my food forest now on the small site even before I live there, because I don't want to wait another year for all of this. So this is a good example of even if you're living in an apartment, a lot of good fruit trees are going to take 2 or 3 years to get of a decent size to be planted. So you might as well start them now and just scrape them along. It'll force you to get your plan together and move to where you need to be. So that's the nursery, and then our more annual production, that's what we're doing on about 200 square feet of space over here. And everything that comes out of that rabbit shed there, not just the manures, but all the hay as well. I have a good source of organic hay, so that's their main feed. I don't use a lot of regular chicken feed, or rabbit feed, and I don't follow a lot of the normal rules. I just use what's available and try to meet their nutritional requirements and give them lots of greens and grass. And in that way, I'm cutting my feed bill down drastically by using a lot of my own grasses. But anyway, all of this gets piled deeply under the beds. I pile hay and leaves and any organic matter I can get my hands on. I pile it deeply all year long. And then when planting time comes, I just scoot it all off. I plant it in. I let everything kind of fill out, and if there's gaps, I'll either mulch it or I'll plant those gaps back in too. And that's where I find working a small space is actually very advantageous, because it's very manageable. If you just have a few beds every time there's a spare space, you just drop a seed right there. And then you never worry about weeding either, because you're so attuned to that little bit of space, and the amount of production you get is massive. Most people just take too much space and they get overwhelmed, everything gets weedy, and they get discouraged. So starting small is really good. So if you're bound by that limitation, don't worry about it. It's a good thing. And so what we're doing here is a lot of high yield crops for early spring. So a lot of radishes, which do really well here in the spring. We have radishes, turnips, sugar snap peas, and tons of greens ranging from kales to lettuces to spinaches. And that's about all we're doing in these beds, because we're planning on moving. So most of our later season stuff like tomatoes and peppers, those will get planted at the other site. But of course any of those things could be planted in this little space. And it's really just 5 beds. On that top of the hill on the north side there, that little trellis is where we want the tallest things, because we don't want to block out any of the light. So that's where we'll have our sugar snap peas climbing up and any other climbers that we want to plant. And we'll gradually get down to the smaller stuff as we go. And the last piece of the puzzle here is the compost. Of course, like I said, we're generating our own inputs, and if you're in a real hurry to get these things done, there is an 18-day method. Jeff Lawton has a great video on that, and you can make compost really quickly. That's what we have going here. And I actually will be using most of this compost on the 5-acre site, because I have not been able to start mulching those beds and I want to plant them out. So I have to do some standard tilling, unfortunately, at that site. I'll only do that for the first year and then switch to no-till. But we'll till that all up and till all of this good compost and a lot of the rabbit manure into the ground there, and that'll help us out there. But between those little elements, the amount of food you can produce on a small space is just incredible. And on top of that, you have foraging. There's so much foraging to be done. A lot of us think that's just kind of a fun little hobby, but I'm surrounded by an incredible amount of food. Like just right here, a random patch of the yard. We have wild garlic. Both the bulbs and the greens are edible. We have dead nettle, which is one of my favorite plants in the world. The flowers have a sweetish taste. The rest of it has a very smoky, pungent flavor, which I like to use in meats. But the health benefits of this are incredible. This has like cured my allergies. It's an antihistamine and has just a number of other properties and is chock full of vitamins. We have, of course, the famous dandelion, which I will take out an annual plant, a food plant, and I'll replace it with dandelions. That's how valuable these are. With their vitamin A and K content, it's through the roof. These things will save your life in a pandemic because of what they'll do for your immune system. They're delicious. People love them, animals love them, and every part of it is edible, from the root to the flower to the leaf. It's all edible, and very delicious and very good for you. So that's just a tiny little patch of lawn, and this entire lawn is just covered in edibles. Not to mention what's out there in the forest naturally, which is elderberry and acorns and hickory, and there's so much food out there. So between foraging and small-scale meat production and a few annual beds, and of course, if you're on a small space that you're going to be for a while, you can get into the food forest and perennial type production. You can generate so much food in such a small amount of space. And you can also be preparing for your larger homestead, because we should all be probably just running to the largest homestead we can get to right now. That's what I'm doing. So that's hopefully will jog some ideas for you as far as small or medium or large scale farming and homesteading, because even if you're on a large space, you may still want to start out small and work your way up. So hope that's helpful to everybody. In the meantime, stay safe, be well, and happy homesteading.